He called my invention a useless toy for lonely losers. He laughed so hard, he actually spilled beer all over the dinner table while mocking me in front of my entire family. But here's what he didn't know. While he was laughing, I was building. And today, the so-called useless gadget turned me into a multi-billionaire, and he's the one begging me for a job. And this is the story of how I turned humiliation into revenge and built an empire out of spite. If you've ever had someone underestimate you or call your dreams worthless, then stick around. This story will hit hard. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you love justice served cold, and let's dive into how I proved everyone, especially my brother, dead wrong. My name is Luna, and people today call me a visionary, a genius, even a billionaire prodigy. But none of those titles erased the night when I sat at my family's dinner table, holding back tears as my own brother reduced my dreams to a punchline. It was a Sunday night. My parents loved family dinners. Mom's roast chicken, Dad's dry humor, the clink of silverware against porcelain plates. Normally, I looked forward to those evenings. They were supposed to be safe. Home. But this night, it turned into a battlefield I never asked for. I had brought something special with me. My prototype. Months of sleepless nights hunched over my workbench, circuits soldered with trembling fingers, lines of code written and rewritten until my eyes burned. To me, it wasn't just a gadget. It was a heartbeat I had coaxed into existence. I called it Navi, a palm-sized AI pet with big, luminous eyes that glowed when you touched it. It didn't just respond to commands like turn on the lights or play music. No, Navi was different. It learned. It adapted to your mood. If you were sad, it cooed softly, nudging your hand. If you laughed, it chirped back with joy. It was companionship in a world where loneliness had become a quiet epidemic. I placed Navi carefully on the dinner table, right next to the bread basket. Its eyes flickered awake, scanning faces. My mom gasped softly. My little cousin leaned closer, intrigued. For a split second, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd see it. Then my brother snorted. And then he laughed. A loud, sharp bark that cut through the room. You're kidding me, right? He choked out between laughs. This is what you've been wasting your life on? A plastic egg with googly eyes. Heat rushed to my cheeks. I opened my mouth to explain, but he wasn't finished. What's next, Luna? Are you gonna knit sweaters for your robo-pets? Maybe open a daycare for lonely adults who can't afford a real dog? The table chuckled nervously. My mom whispered, Ethan, trying to rein him in. But he only leaned back in his chair, smug grin plastered on his face. Seriously, sis. You're 24 years old. You have a degree you barely use. And this? This is your grand business plan? A useless toy for losers who can't make friends. His words landed like punches. My fork slipped from my hand, clattering against my plate. I felt every eye on me. I forced a smile, though my throat burned. Maybe you don't get it, I said quietly. Oh, I get it, he shot back. You're chasing some fantasy, hoping to be the next Zuckerberg. Hate to break it to you, but people don't throw money at silly little toys. Grow up, Luna. Get a real job. Silence. Only the hum of the fridge in the kitchen. The faint ticking of the wall clock. My parents shifted uncomfortably. No one came to my defense. That night, as I carried Navi back to my car, I felt like the loneliest person on earth. But here's what my brother didn't know. I had already spent months testing Navi with kids in hospitals, seniors in nursing homes, and even stressed-out college students. And every time, I saw the same spark. The comfort, the companionship, the relief of not being alone. It wasn't a joke. It was the future. Still, his laughter stuck in my chest like a splinter. I heard it when I soldered wires at 2 a.m. I heard it when I recoded faulty voice recognition loops. I heard it when investors turned me down. Cute idea, but too niche. Every rejection replayed his words. Useless. Toy. Loser. But instead of breaking me, it fueled me. He didn't stop after that night. At Christmas, when I gave Navi to my cousin as a gift, Ethan snickered loud enough for everyone to hear. Careful, buddy. Don't get too attached to your plastic Tamagotchi 2.0. At our cousin's wedding, he raised his glass and joked, "Don't worry, everyone, Luna didn't bring a date. She brought her robopet instead." Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I just smiled tightly, pretending it didn't hurt, while my insides twisted with rage. I learned to swallow humiliation whole, but every bite only hardened into determination. If he thought Navi was useless, fine. I'd show him. I'd show all of them. And someday, he'd choke on his own laughter. That was the night the story really began. Not with my first line of code, but with his smirk across the dinner table. Because betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes wearing the same last name. And in that moment, I swore one thing to myself: Ethan will regret ever underestimating me. The weeks after that humiliating dinner felt like dragging chains. I carried Ethan's laughter with me everywhere. Every rejection letter from investors, every cold glance from serious business people, echoed his words. Useless. Toy. Loser. But here's the thing. Humiliation can light a fire hotter than anger ever could. By day, I worked a boring data entry job at a marketing firm. I smiled through endless spreadsheets, answered emails, and nodded politely in meetings. By night, I lived in my cramped studio apartment, soldering wires under a flickering desk lamp while Navi's tiny eyes glowed faintly beside me, like it was keeping me company. Some nights, I whispered to it, "They don't see you. They don't get it." But one day, they will. My first pitch meeting was a disaster. I had scraped together enough money to enter a local tech startup competition. I walked into that glossy boardroom wearing my one good blazer, clutching Navi like a lifeline. The judges, 3 middle-aged men in suits, barely looked up from their laptops. I launched into my pitch. A personal AI companion that learns your emotions, adapts to your personality, and helps combat loneliness. It's not just a gadget. It's care. It's companionship. When Navi chirped and tilted its glowing eyes toward the closest judge, I felt proud. Until he smirked. "So, it's like an Alexa, but for people with no friends?" Laughter from the panel. My stomach dropped. My hands trembled. I pushed through, explaining the adaptive algorithms, the emotion mirroring features, the therapeutic uses. But their eyes glazed over. "Cute idea," one said dismissively. "Too niche," another muttered. "Not scalable," the third concluded. That night, I cried until my pillow was soaked. Not because I doubted Navi, but because I felt invisible. Like Ethan had cursed me, and no one would ever take me seriously. And of course, Ethan didn't let it go. At family brunch a week later, he leaned back in his chair, swirling his mimosa, and asked loudly, "So, Luna, how's the RoboPet daycare going? Did anyone adopt your plastic egg yet?" The table laughed. My uncle slapped him on the back. My parents gave me that pitying look. My chest burned, but I forced a calm smile. "It's going well," I lied. "Better than you think." But inside, my nails dug crescents into my palms. I was tired of being the joke. 2 months later, everything changed. I had almost given up. Navi sat on my shelf dusty, as I tried to convince myself to apply for graduate school and leave the dream behind. Then I got an email. It was from a children's hospital. Apparently, one of the nurses had seen Navi at the startup competition. She asked if I'd be willing to bring it in for a trial session with some of the kids in long-term care. I almost said no. My confidence was shattered. But something in me whispered, "Try one more time." The first time Navi blinked its little eyes at a 7-year-old girl named Hannah, who had been bedridden for months, the room changed. Her face lit up. She reached out, and Navi chirped softly, nudging her hand. "Mom, it likes me," Hannah whispered. Her mom covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. That moment cracked something open inside me. This wasn't silly. This wasn't useless. It mattered. And suddenly I knew. I couldn't quit. For the next year, I lived like a ghost. Work, eat, code, sleep. Repeat. Every dollar I saved went into improving Navi. I taught myself advanced machine learning through free online courses. I sold my car and used public transit so I could afford better microprocessors. Loneliness gnawed at me, but Navi's glowing eyes and soft chirps reminded me what I was fighting for. Meanwhile, Ethan was thriving. Or at least, that's what Instagram said. Fancy vacations. New car. Promotions at his finance job. Every post, every smug selfie was another reminder. He had the approval, the respect, the validation. And me? I had a dusty apartment and a plastic egg no one believed in. But what I had, what he didn't, was purpose. It happened one rainy Thursday. I had uploaded a video to YouTube of Navi interacting with a therapy dog, showcasing how it mirrored emotions. I didn't expect much. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. 10,000 views. Then 100,000. Then 500,000. Comments flooded in. I'd buy this for my grandma. This could help kids with autism. Where can I order one? My hands shook as I scrolled. It wasn't investors. It wasn't family. It was strangers. Real people. Who saw Navi? By the end of the week, I had a wait list of 8,000 people begging to buy one. That was the first time I allowed myself to smile without guilt. But I didn't tell Ethan. Not yet. I wanted him to find out the hard way. Because if there's one thing sweeter than success, it's watching the person who mocked you choke on their own words. The shift from being invisible to suddenly having thousands of strangers cheering me on felt surreal. One moment, I was a girl soldering wires alone in a dim apartment. The next, emails poured in from parents, teachers, therapists, all begging to know how they could get a Navi. For the first time in years, I didn't hear Ethan's laughter in my head. Instead, I heard the ping of notifications, the hum of possibility, the sound of my dream finally breaking free from my cramped desk and stepping into the world. I started small. Pre-orders. Handmade units I assembled with aching fingers late into the night. I packaged them with care, slipping little handwritten notes inside. Navi was built to be your friend. Every order felt like proof that I wasn't crazy, that my brother had been wrong. Customers began sharing videos online. Kids hugging Navi, elderly folks smiling as it chirped back at them, even soldiers overseas using it to feel less alone. The clips went viral. Journalists reached out. Tech's most heartwarming invention. One headline read, "My waitlist jumped from thousands to tens of thousands." I didn't sleep much, but when I did, it was with a grin on my face. The first time Ethan heard about it wasn't from me. It was from one of his coworkers. At another family brunch, I watched his smirk falter when my aunt leaned across the table and said, "Ethan, isn't this your sister they were talking about on the news? That little AI pet thing." He froze, then plastered on a fake grin. "Oh yeah, Luna's little hobby project." His voice dripped with forced casualness, but I saw the flicker of unease in his eyes. My chest swelled with quiet satisfaction. For once, I wasn't the punchline. I was the headline. But success wasn't just about proving him wrong. It was about proving myself right. I secured my first round of serious funding. Investors who once waved me off were suddenly begging for a meeting. I walked into those glossy offices in the same blazer I wore during my disastrous first pitch, but this time, they leaned forward eagerly, nodding at every word. They didn't see a cute toy anymore, they saw dollar signs. I accepted their money, but in my heart, I wasn't building for them. I was building for the little girl in the hospital who needed a friend, for the lonely man in the nursing home who smiled for the first time in weeks, for everyone who ever felt invisible. Within a year, my tiny apartment had transformed into the headquarters of a real company. I hired a small team, people who believed in the vision as much as I did. We scaled production, refined the AI, and rolled out new models. Demand exploded worldwide. Articles called me the girl who made loneliness obsolete. My parents, once hesitant, started boasting about me to their friends. And Ethan? He stayed quiet. Too quiet. Until one evening, I got a message request on LinkedIn. It was from him. "Hey sis, long time. Congrats on all your success. Listen, things at my firm aren't going so great. I was wondering if you had a role at your company that might fit my skill set. Finance, operations, my expertise." I stared at the message, my hands trembling. The same brother who once ridiculed me in front of everyone, who called my dream a useless toy, was now begging me for a job. I didn't reply. Not yet. Revenge isn't about rushing. It's about savoring. Instead, I invited the family over for dinner. This time it was my table, my house, my rules. A sleek modern dining room in a penthouse apartment paid for by the useless toy. I placed a Navi at every seat, glowing softly like tiny guardians. When Ethan walked in, his jaw clenched. I could see the jealousy flicker across his face as he took in the high ceilings, the city's skyline twinkling through the glass walls. "Nice place," he muttered. "Thanks," I said, smiling sweetly. "Built it with a plastic egg." The look on his face was priceless. He tried to laugh it off, but his eyes betrayed him. For the first time, he wasn't in control of the joke. He was the joke. Later that night, while pouring wine, I finally addressed the elephant in the room. "So, Ethan, I saw your message. You're looking for a job." His smile was tight, his voice strained. "Yeah. I mean, things happen. Markets shift. I figured maybe you could use someone with my background." I leaned back in my chair, swirling the wine in my glass. "Funny, because I remember you saying no one would ever throw money at a silly little toy. That it was useless." The silence at the table was thick. My parents shifted uncomfortably. My aunt cleared her throat, but I didn't break eye contact with him. His face flushed, his jaw clenched, but he said nothing. I could have humiliated him further. I could have printed his LinkedIn message and framed it in my office. But I didn't need to. The revenge was already complete. The empire he mocked had not only succeeded, it had surpassed anything he'd ever achieved. And now he had to live with the truth that his laughter once fueled the very fire that left him in my shadow. As the night wound down, I walked him to the door. "You know, Ethan," I said softly, "sometimes useless things end up changing the world." He didn't reply. He just walked away, shoulders tight, head down. And that was when I realized, revenge isn't always about destroying someone else. Sometimes, it's about building yourself so high that they have no choice but to look up. The night after Ethan walked out of my penthouse, I stood by the window, looking at the city lights stretching endlessly below. For years, those lights had mocked me, reminders of people who made it, while I soldered wires alone. But now they felt different. They felt like proof that I belonged among them. Still, beneath the glow of success, something unsettled lingered. My revenge wasn't complete. Watching Ethan squirm at dinner was satisfying, but I wanted more. I wanted the same sting of humiliation he had dealt me, except this time, it would be public, undeniable, unforgettable. The opportunity came faster than I imagined. A major tech conference in San Francisco invited me to speak as the keynote. My company had just passed the $5 billion valuation mark. Our newest model of Navi was selling out in every country, and investors were hailing me as one of the youngest female billionaires in the industry. The thought of standing on stage, telling my story to thousands of innovators terrified me, but it also thrilled me. And somewhere deep down, I knew this was the stage where I'd finish what Ethan started at that dinner table. In the weeks leading up to the conference, I worked tirelessly with my team, perfecting the presentation. We weren't just showcasing a product anymore. We were unveiling a revolution. The new Navi wasn't a toy, not even close. It could sense stress in your tone, suggest breathing exercises, even connect you with a therapist if you seemed in distress. It was AI, not for convenience, but for care. And the world was finally ready to listen. The night before the conference, I got another message from Ethan. This time it wasn't just a job request. It was desperation. "Luna, I really need this. Things are bad. I can't keep up. Please let me prove myself to you. Give me a chance." Reading it, I felt a swirl of emotions. This was my brother, the boy who once chased me through sprinklers in our backyard, who taught me to ride a bike. But it was also the man who mocked me in front of everyone I loved, who turned my dream into his favorite punchline. I closed the message without replying. Revenge, I realized, sometimes requires silence. When the day came, the conference hall was electric. Rows of tech giants, investors, journalists, influencers, all waiting to hear the future. As I stepped onto the stage, the applause roared. I adjusted the microphone, my heart thundering in my chest, and began. I didn't start with numbers or graphs. I started with a story. "I was told once," I said, scanning the crowd, "that what I was building was a useless toy, that no one would ever care about it. that I should give up. My voice didn't shake. I stood tall, the lights blazing down on me, my words rolling smooth and deliberate. But I believed in something bigger. I believed loneliness could be fought with connection. That technology could make us feel less alone. That companionship is not a luxury. It's a necessity. And today, what was once called useless has become a billion-dollar revolution. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. I smiled, not for the audience, not even for myself, but for the ghost of Ethan's laughter that had haunted me for so long. I was finally drowning it out. Later that evening, during the networking gala, I spotted him. Ethan, dressed in a wrinkled suit, tie slightly crooked, eyes darting nervously as he clutched a drink. My stomach twisted. He didn't belong here, not really, but somehow he had found his way in. When our eyes met across the room, his face flushed. He walked over, slower than I remembered, as if carrying the weight of every mistake. "Luna," he said, his voice low, almost fragile. "That was impressive." "Thanks," I replied, cool and steady. "I mean it. You've done incredible." I was wrong. About everything. He rubbed the back of his neck, gaze dropping to the floor. "Look, I know I don't deserve it, but if you have any role, any opening, even something small, I'd be grateful. I need a break." I studied him, the same brother who once smirked at me across a dinner table. Now he couldn't even look me in the eye. A part of me softened, but the sharper part, the one that remembered years of humiliation, took control. This was my moment. "You know what's funny?" I said, leaning closer so only he could hear. "You once told me no one would throw money at a silly little toy. But tonight, I stood on a stage and watched the world throw billions at it. You mocked me for dreaming. And now, my dream is the only lifeline you're reaching for." His face crumpled. He opened his mouth, but no words came. I stepped back, my smile calm, my voice firm. "I don't think I need someone on my team who can't see value until it's already too late." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the crowd, surrounded by people who now only wanted to talk to me. That was the revenge. Not cruelty, not revenge for revenge's sake, but forcing him to live in the shadow of what he had dismissed. To watch me succeed without him. Weeks later, magazines printed photos of me shaking hands with CEOs, announcing partnerships, unveiling new breakthroughs. Ethan, meanwhile, slipped further from the spotlight, his career unraveling, his pride bleeding out in quiet desperation. My parents eventually told me he had moved into a smaller apartment, sold his car, and was struggling to keep work. They looked at me, torn between pride and pity, but I only nodded. Some lessons aren't taught with kindness. The day my company went public, I rang the opening bell at the stock exchange. Cameras flashed, confetti fell, and the stock price soared higher and higher. I stood there in my tailored suit, holding the gavel, and thought of the girl who once cried into her pillow after being laughed out of a pitch meeting. I thought of the hospital child who whispered, "It likes me." I thought of my brother, laughing over dinner, and then begging me for help years later. And in that moment, I knew my revenge was complete. Because revenge isn't always about crushing someone. Sometimes, it's about building yourself so high that those who doubted you can never reach the same height. Ethan's laughter no longer haunted me. It fueled me. It created me. And now, every time he thought of me, he would remember that the empire I built was born from the words he used to tear me down. That is the sweetest revenge of all. The morning after my company went public, I sat in my penthouse kitchen with a cup of coffee, looking out at the skyline. The city buzzed with a new day, headlines flashing my name across every major outlet. Billionaire. Visionary. Innovator. Titles I never asked for, but ones I had earned through every sleepless night, every tear-stained pillow, every humiliation that once threatened to bury me. And yet, in the quiet of my own home, I felt a strange calm. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about Ethan anymore. It had never really been about him. He was just the spark, the cruel voice that turned my doubt into fire. The true revenge was this: I didn't just survive his mockery. I thrived because of it. Sometimes, the deepest cuts don't heal with apologies. They heal when you rise so high that the person who hurt you can't even touch the ground you walk on. Ethan would carry his choices forever. The choice to laugh, to belittle, to dismiss. And every time he saw my face on a magazine, every time he heard Navi chirp from someone's desk, every time he scrolled past another headline with my name attached, he'd remember. He'd remember how wrong he was. That was the punishment. That was the justice. I wasn't naive. Family is complicated. Part of me still loved my brother, the boy who once carried me on his shoulders, who raced me on bicycles down the street, who whispered secrets in the dark. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man who underestimated me until it was too late. And so I let go. Not with bitterness, not with cruelty. I simply let him live with the echo of his own laughter, the sound that had built my empire. And to anyone listening who's ever been mocked, belittled, or told your dreams were worthless, I want you to hear this. You are not useless. Your vision matters, even if no one else sees it yet. Especially if no one else sees it yet. Sometimes the very people who laugh the loudest are the ones who will one day have to watch you rise from the sidelines. My name is Luna. My brother once called my dream a useless toy. Today, that toy is a global empire worth billions. And that, right there, is the sweetest revenge I could have ever imagined. So maybe the lesson here isn't just about proving someone wrong. Maybe it's about proving yourself right. About believing in your own fire when the world hands you buckets of doubt. Revenge is sweet, but validation, the kind you give yourself, that's priceless. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and drop a comment. Have you ever been underestimated only to prove someone wrong later? I'd love to hear your stories. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful tales of betrayal, revenge, and redemption, just like Luna's.